Welcome to week one. Every week we will be doing an overview of the readings that you did and also kind of prefacing what you'll need to do for week two. So before we go through the week one readings, just want to let you know that week two, which starts today, will be engaged through the learning modules. So you'll go over here. You'll see the overview is to read the readings, of course, to post your responses, and then to review the podcast. Just to let you know, I did update the reading list. Thank you, Kathy, for sending that email. And of course, here are the notes for the discussion as well as the link to the podcast. So you want to make sure that you're going through all of those resources as you're moving forward. In addition, I will be posting comments to you in your discussion area so that you can go ahead and make sure that you are understanding how to engage and to pull forward with information. Just to let you know, what we'll do in each of these podcasts is kind of go over some strengths or questions and even concerns that I might have in reference to your postings. I do sense that many of you were a little bit fearful of posting and that you kind of got a little more comfortable. And remember, this first week is really about figuring out what it means to engage literature from a critical perspective, but also what it means to look at readings as not just a story that we are engaging to take us away from something, but instead to look at story as a way to engage in understanding our world, our history, our beliefs, our thoughts, right? And so that's kind of what we want to consider as we move from week one to week two. First, of course, Patrick mentioned that his first response was lost. I'm really sorry about that. Um, this is a good basic overview, but I do get the sense that it's a little too conversational, Patrick. What I would recommend is taking a look at, as you did in the first, that really you did an excellent job here. For instance, your reading of Roman Fever is very on point. That you also then pulled in, just as I mentioned, a bit of the historical values that were occurring at this time so that you can really integrate it. And that is fantastic. Now, Danny, I love that you brought in an outside source from Bill O'Reilly, talking a lot about kind of how primary sources were very important to understanding. And I appreciate that because when we read these stories, they are creative, they are fiction, so they do have elements that are reflective of history, but they're also commentary on history too. And thanks for doing your post. Remember, and I spoke a little bit with a couple students about this. When you're using evidence from the readings, quotes, observations, you should be citing. MLA is the preferred style, and Danny, like you put here, this is what you're going to want to follow. And Danny, your posting here is very, very solid. You don't have to italicize the quotes. Remember when you're using MLA that instead of italicizing, what you do is you put it in quotations, which you did, and then you put the page number or the paragraph number if it's an electronic source. So you've got a good start here, but instead of the period being inside the quotation, the period would go after the parentheses, and then after Howells you would have the page number. But I appreciate your level of attention and focus and engaging the resources as evidence. Brian, your pull out of the realistic nature of Chickamauga is key. I think most of the students would agree that this is a very graphic, but yet at the same time powerful story. You did a great job of using the evidence from the story to support that. Remember to follow the conventions of MLA and to go ahead and put the author there. And then, of course, to put, which would be Bierce, and then to put the page number. LaShonda, you've got a good start here. It's a little bit rough, and I think what has happened is you might want to spend some time revising this before you post it. A good strategy to do would be to take a look at this as a paper. And so you write it, you draft it, you kind of outline it, you put it down your words, and then maybe you go through a couple revisions. And remember that Troy allows you guys to use smart thinking, which is a great tool to get you some feedback on your writing. Of course, LaShonda, I'm happy to help too. Brent, you have a good observation here about the wonderful tar baby, the way that the words or the dialect functions. And that is something that is key to local color realism and also realism in general is kind of that reflective quality of life that occurs in the literature. John, you have a fantastic posting. I appreciate that you're using MLA properly, and that you really went into the story in the sense of what does the narrator's point of view really tell us about the story and how we should interpret this experience. It's a very analytic move to consider what commentary is being put forward in the text, and that is what you have really engaged in your posting, and I appreciate that work. And I hope that others have also enjoyed reading it too. LaShonda, I think this was a good posting on Chickamauga. Let's pay a little more attention to, like I said, that kind of revision and editing, but you did a great reading that really dovetailed in nicely with John. David, thank you for your good engaged overview of the storm. I would like to see a little less, I guess you'd say, summary and more what you said here. Like you mentioned that it's realistic, which we have up here in this kind of summary. But what is it about realistic? What is it about this being an event, this kind of relationship tension between the man and the wife that happens all the time? And how does it culturally end in this cleaving or this divorce? In addition, make sure that you're following MLA reference style. If you're having some issues with doing that, a great resource that I have found is a site called Night Site, like Knights of the Round Table, KNIGHTCITE.com, which kind of takes you through kind of how to do MLA APA Chicago. And it's run by Calvin College, so it's a very authoritative citation generator. You guys have some great engaged responses back and forth, and I appreciate that. And as you kind of build this course and we build this community, you will see that the better responses you give to each other will also help your responses become solid and will help to create a community. Even though we're very far away from each other, I'm hoping that what we do in this online space also engages in a communicative quality. I wanted to also call out Kyle's really good observation here about the notion of immersion and this kind of being focused on how the character relates and kind of using that as the thread to look at Chickamauga, Roman Fever, and the Wonderful Tar Baby. That is a good idea when you're writing your discussion postings, is to try to figure out what is a common theme or a common question that these readings are attempting to answer, and then to use that as a guideline for writing your response posting. Brittany had a fantastic posting. I absolutely loved your reading of the storm. In fact, this notion of this kind of very abrupt departure about how sexual this woman is, and that this was not something that was really privileged, particularly in this more Victorian kind of perspective. And that is a key element. And that shows that you were thinking not just about how these stories tell a story, but instead what stories do these fictional accounts kind of relate to or brush up against in relation to history, culture, and society. And the same with Lacey's. You kind of really focus on pulling in this notion of normalcy and what does it mean to be normal. And I'm glad that the podcast was very helpful. One of the reasons that I do kind of these video and these audio recordings is because I find that sometimes it's good just to talk it through. And also to allow that to give you a better sense of understanding with it. As Wade has mentioned here, this notion of indications and relating to realism. Anna had a very good post, as well as Brian, and I really also enjoyed Camaros. So overall, I really appreciate kind of the work that you guys have done, and I look forward to kind of seeing what build-ups you will continue to do. So please keep me posted. Like I said, I look forward to seeing your readings, and I look forward to continuing more of this. Aretha's, your posting is solid. Delena's, Victor's, these are all great postings. Jeanette, and so like I said, I look forward to seeing a bit more and keep on engaging it. Thanks so much for your work, and keep me posted.